Thank you for joining us today for our construction webinar. We're going to wait just a couple minutes to start. We're going to do some housekeeping items real quickly. I'll just introduce myself and then I'll introduce Scott as well, but we'll do this in just a couple minutes when everybody gets in and gets loaded. My name's Taylor Riley. I'm a mortgage consultant at the credit union. This is Scott McKay.
Hi.
He's a custom builder, and so he graciously is going to give us expertise today to be able to talk to us about some questions that we'll have and some questions that you'll be able to ask as well. There is an area where you can be able to ask questions. Type them in, please. We'd like as many questions as possible so that we can be able to go through a few items. I've typed up some questions as well. We're going to go through and give a little presentation on what a construction loan is, how it can be able to help, some items that go along with that. And then Scott and I are going to take a couple minutes to be able to talk about some questions that I have for him as a builder so that we can be able to get his expertise and being able to give us some answers with those types of questions that I have for him. So we'll wait just a couple minutes and then we'll get started with our presentation. And then while this is going, you can be able to see our contact information on the front. You can be able to see my name, my email address, and then my office phone number. You also can be able to see Scott's name, his email address, and his cell phone number. I know from personal experience, you're more than welcome to be able to text him, and he'll respond in a timely manner. Do you prefer text, call, or do you prefer a email?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, email's good for me. Calling my office phone is the best way to get in contact with me. I don't have my computer open with me when I'm out of the office for events like this, or if I'm at closings or appointments. But I have my cell phone with me at all times, and my office forwards to my cell phone. Okay, we're going to get started with our construction webinar. And what we're going to be covering today, we're going to talk about what a construction loan is. We're going to talk about how a construction loan can help you achieve your goals. We've all heard horror stories of contractors. That's why we wanted to have a contractor here to be able to talk about those types of things. I find that when I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're telling me a horror story, there are some off ramps that I call them that I can hear in the story where I'm like, I think if you would have done this, it would have turned out a lot better.
Right.
So I'll just ask you with that real quickly. When you hear a horror story from somebody else, because they know you're a contractor, what are usually some things that cause people to have that bad experience? I know sometimes there are bad contractors, but I think inexperience helps exacerbate the problem that was going to be there.
Right. It's always, first of all, it comes down to communication. The better you can communicate, and the better you can get your ideas across to the contractor, and then the contractor can understand those. And then you can also, and as long as you understand what the contractor is doing, so it's really great to have a contractor who will explain the steps to you and what you're going through and how this is all going to proceed. And then understand, especially since COVID, the hangups and all the suppliers, getting what we need for the job. And then of course there's the subcontractors, how busy they are. Right now it's a real good time because a lot of subcontractors are actually not working as much as they did, but a lot of things have changed since COVID. So in my world, quite a few of my subcontractors have retired.
Interesting.
And some of them have been bought out by bigger companies.
Okay.
And so by being bought out by a bigger company, now they've kind of lost some of their management, because now it goes to some type of dispatcher who's dispatching different people, and they're also you don't really have the guy who started the business, who was, let's say, the master electrician or master plumber or head HVAC guy who's running the business and can help out the guys in the field as they're needed. So it's always good to find one of those companies. That's what I try to look for instead of these bigger ones, because they tend to gouge and charge a little bit too much.
Yeah, you brought up COVID. One of the things that I noticed with COVID is that people that were in that 55 to 70-year-old range that were enjoying work, they kind of lost that desire and that burn that they had to be able to do it. And so you've seen a lot of them going out. On top of that, I was listening to a podcast the other day where it talked about the average age of a plumber, the average age of an electrician, and how they're very, very high, much higher than I would have anticipated. But when I think about it, I don't have any friends, all my brother's friends, and none of them are plumbers, electricians, and that sort of thing. So when you have that sort of thing happen where a lot of people exited the job force, is that what's caused, when you say since COVID, is that part of what's taken place in the workforce?
I think so, because some of these now, they've gone from, a bunch of smaller companies to fewer larger companies.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of looking at their price,
Okay.
their costs,
Mm-hmm.
and their profit margins.
Okay.
And so it's and then they also bring out a tablet,
Mm-hmm.
and now they've got these sort of generic prices to quote you.
Okay.
And those things can be a little bit higher than you want to spend.
Okay.
And so again, since COVID, I've actually had one sub come up to me and tell me, okay, it's hard getting these younger guys to be part of it,
Mm-hmm.
part of a trade. So in order to get these guys in here, you're just going to have to deal with a little inefficiency.
Mm.
Because I'm like, the guy was sitting in his car having lunch
Yeah.
for 2 hours.
Mm.
And well, we have the GPS that he was on the job site. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but he was in his truck.
Yeah. No,
So-
that makes sense. Well, and I think that's going to be a big part in the contractor, what we're talking about, and how the contractor can be able to help. How does the contractor help you? How can we be able to mitigate costs? Those are some things that we're going to be able to dive into. So let's start with the first question that we have is, what is a construction loan? A construction loan, the best way to think about it is that we are using the future value of the home for the loan to value to be able to do the project itself. So when somebody says, I want to do some construction job, they're thinking, I need a construction loan. And that's not necessarily true. There's other avenues that we can be able to go with that can possibly be able to save money and be a little bit easier. But a construction loan is really going to be a large project where we need to use future equity that's going to be there when the project is completed. And that's what we can be able to use as a starting point so that we can be able to make sure we have enough equity in the home to be able to take care of everything. If it's a smaller job, then as I said, there's other things that we're going to get to a little bit later in the webinar and talk about those sorts of loan products. Okay, so as I talked about, construction loan is designed to help a member borrow a loan amount using the future value of their home. The future value of the home is what the value is estimated to be once the home is completed. So we have a estimate at the very beginning of the project on how much the home is going to be worth at the end of it. And that's going to be an important thing. We've had other webinars where we've talked to appraisers about that sort of thing. There can be an increase in the value of the home in that time, but we're using that same value throughout the entire project. Most of our projects that we've had over the past, 5 to 8 years previous to COVID, a 12-month build time was the longest build time that we'd see. We had 6, 9, and 12-month options. I can't remember the last time I did a 6 or 9 month option with that. Everybody is quoting that 12 to 18 month time frame. Why has the time frame increased so much to be able to build a home from what we had previously?
That's a really good question. I think more people are building homes.
Okay.
Simply more people are building homes, supply and demand. So there's a lot of demand on the subs and the tradesmen to get to the job site. The other thing is that there's so many different products out there now.
Okay.
So you have more complexity to the homes that are being built, and there's just so many choices and decisions that a homeowner needs to make. And he thinks he's going to put on a roof. Well, then there's about a half dozen different ideas on what type of material to use for that
Mm-hmm.
roof. And he's got to make those decisions, because as a contractor, you're just doing what your client wants.
Okay. You're talking about the diversity of, are you talking about the diversity of products or the type of homes, like with tiny homes or maybe the shipping container homes? Are those the type of materials you're talking about? Or are we talking about like solar panels and those types of things that are different from what we had maybe 10 years ago?
I'm talking across the board,
Okay.
starting with plumbing fixtures and
Mm.
electrical fixtures.
Okay.
And mostly all the finishes.
Okay.
All the finishes are different. It's pretty much the same box, you know, all the way up through drywall.
Mm-hmm.
Few exceptions of, you know, some different things that you can add as far as insulation goes and,
Mm-hmm.
and sidings and things like that. But when it comes down to getting the house finished, it's the finishes that take more time.
Do you think that that is a supply chain issue with the finishes, or do you think it's, because what I see when I'm doing a construction loan is that I'll have a conversation with the builder who has a conversation with the person who, the member who's going to be building the home. And then I'll have a conversation with the member. And it seems like each time that I have that conversation, there's a 24 to 36 hour lag time from each person that we're kind of talking to. So all of a sudden, to kind of get around to everything, it's been 3-4 days in the process. Is that sort of thing that causes this to take longer, or is it more of the decisions that somebody's making?
Well, I think it is some of the decisions that they're making.
Is there a way that they could be able to make all those decisions up front, or is that not something that is typically done? I guess what I'm asking is there ways that people could be able to expedite this so that they're not running into those time frame issues?
Yeah, I do know a couple of builders in the Valley. I build a lot of custom homes, so so there's changes constantly, and so a custom home is nothing but a change order.
Okay.
And but there are production home or semi-custom home builders down here. One in particular is Gordon Mylar Construction, and they bring in their people. They have them pick out all their stuff right up front, and then they, you know, lay out a critical path method to getting the home construction, and then they, especially if they have a lot picked out and so forth, then they get the permitting, and then they start building right from there. And typically, what will happen or slow up the process will be any changes that the homeowner will make along the way. But they'll give them a range, they'll send them to their subs, they'll sit down with the subs, they'll go over, you know, what the options are. And then sometimes they want to go beyond the options. And then sometimes when you go beyond the options, you start to add costs and time.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like with the things that you're talking about, that the home builder may be the same, like the member that's building the home, they may be acting the same, but because of the climate of being able to get items, that's what's kind of the combination of the two is what's causing the delay.
And coming back to your earlier point on the decisions, the problem that we had a lot during COVID is that all of a sudden everybody's workload doubled and tripled. And when that happens, it's going to take a little bit longer to get back to the number of clients that you have because your workload has doubled and tripled. And it's not necessarily your fault. You're sitting there and you're going, you know, I'd like to, well, you're the guy. And it's like, okay, well, if we start now, but, you know, I've also got more projects going on. So I will try to get back to you as fast as I can. Right now, I think that it looks a lot better out there for construction and building from the member or the homeowner's point of view.
Yeah, I would agree. I know that it seemed like in the fall, what I was reading about in the conversations I was having with a lot of the builders and the subs and stuff like that is that they were extremely busy. And then now I'm talking to them 6-5 months later, and they don't have a lot of projects that are going on. A couple of them will constantly call me and be like, hey, have you heard from anybody? And it's just, there's kind of been a change in a pretty quick manner or pretty expedited time frame from when I was talking to people in maybe the late summer, early fall to what the workload is right now.
Right, that's really true. In fact, some subs are calling me right now saying, hey, what do you got?
Yeah, agreed. We'll get into how that can be able to benefit us or benefit you in just a little bit. So what is the value of a construction loan? So construction loans have a lot of red tape, and there are a lot of moving parts. Building a home or adding an addition to an existing structure requires an expertise. It's not something that's just easy to be able to do. We want to make sure we have safeguards in place to ensure that the job gets done right. UFirst Credit Union takes an added step that most financial institutions don't take, where we actually pull credit on the builder if we're doing a construction loan. So that's something that a lot of financial institutions don't do. We want to make sure that the person that we're getting into business with pays their bills. It's not something where we're going through and we're checking their credit to make sure that they have a minimum credit score or anything that goes along with that. We just want to make sure that they don't have liens and judgments that are against them. There's some things that we can be able to do to move around that, but that's typically the easiest way to be able to do everything that we need to do. We've also invested in new technology to make sure that there's transparency for the builder and also for the member with the new site that we have, a new program or a new third-party method that we use, site that we use called Built. It's really nice. Every dollar is accounted for, where the builder can be able to go in and they can be able to put in what they need to be able to be paid. The member at that point will approve that just to make sure that we've got safeguards in place. It makes it really easy. I've had a few situations prior to Built where the contractor had basically spent more money than they should have in certain areas, and the member never notified us of anything that was going on. So we got to the end of it and it's like, we're over budget or we're out of money or something like that. Those were kind of extreme situations. This new product, this new program really can be able to help us in what we're looking for to be able to make sure that there's transparency across the board. Another question, how do you get a construction loan to be able to do a construction, or excuse me, do I have to have a construction loan to be able to do a construction project? The answer to that is no. There are many other products that we use to allow people to be able to complete a construction project, and we'll talk about some of those in a little bit. That doesn't change anything from the contractor side. It's just how are you getting the money to be able to do the project? We'll be able to go into a little bit more detail of that in just a couple minutes. Okay, so we talked about the horror stories. What's the purpose of the contractor? That's a question I have for you, Scott. So what is your purpose as a contractor? What are you there to do?
Well, to build the home.
Okay.
First of all, you have to get a lot of hoops you have to jump through right away when you get a building permit. And especially in the custom world. And especially if you have your own lot. Mm-hmm. Or if you want to build an ADU on your mm-hmm. lot, you're going to need to get all your permits. Okay. The next thing is that you're going to have to tap into all the utilities. Mm-hmm. You've got sewer, water, gas, electric, cable, etc. So the contractor's there to make sure that all of these things, come together to build the house. Secondly, the contractor has connections or to whether or not all the subs, starting from clearing the lot, excavating the lot, foundation to framing. He also has relationship with suppliers for lumber and for different materials that are needed mm-hmm. on the job, and he sees the entire job come together, and he's the one that, especially if you're not familiar with construction, mm-hmm. he can answer all the questions for you and help you along the way. And if you come up with any ideas, he will input those ideas. Mm-hmm. And hopefully he's just like having a right-hand man. Mm-hmm. He's on your side. He's helping you along the building process to build what you want. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I have to say that 99.9% of all the people I build for, didn't know them before I started building their home, but afterwards became good friends.
Okay, I like that. I think while you were talking about that, I think about as a mortgage consultant and being able to help people buy homes. I have people come sit at my desk every week, and I can tell that they are overwhelmed by the thought of buying a home. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is a really easy project or process to be able to go through. And it's probably for the first 3 or 4 years that I did this, I was always like, I don't understand the trepidation that they have. I remember going through it myself, and I just put a lot of trust in my mortgage consultant and my realtor to be able to go through. Now that I've grown up a little bit and being able to look at it from a little bit older perspective, it's kind of like I was kind of naive in what I was going through and put too much trust in all of them. Luckily, I had a really good agent, really good mortgage consultants to be able to help me through that. But it's easy for me to be able to see where they're at and see it to the end, but to be able to portray that and help them with the steps, because there are things that they need to do on their side. you can't do
Correct.
everything for them, to really guide them through to make sure that it isn't in an expedited manner. It's the expertise and professionalism is paramount.
Right, and you also want to get them to the right people where they can make all those decisions they have
Mhm.
to make. So if you have with your subs, a lot of your subs have designers who are working for, the flooring company, the plumbing companies, the lighting, all
Mhm.
the fixtures, all the finishes, and you want to get them to the right people who can facilitate with their needs, because not everybody has the same budget.
Mhm. Well, that makes sense. Um, So one of the things you talked about, making it easier for the individual, and then also, well, let's talk about making it easier for the individual. So you talked about making sure that you're seeing the entire vision and when they need to do things. And you were talking about, what was that company that you mentioned earlier?
Gordon Mylar Construction.
Gordon Mylar Construction,
Right.
where they a little bit maybe smaller projects, but they have the whole entire thing set out to begin with. How is that different than building a custom home? Because you said a custom home is just a
Well, they're
different order.
they're fully capable of building custom homes.
Okay.
In the first place. But as a custom home builder, especially in Summit County,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you have very selective clients, and they have a very um, uh, eclectic or eccentric
Mm-hmm.
taste palette,
Okay.
and bringing all of those together is what creates a custom home, and that custom home builder being able to help that person to import tile from Italy,
Yeah.
or to bring other different type of painters that'll come in and do different types of
Interesting.
finishes, and also different types of drywall finishes,
Yeah.
and et cetera, et cetera.
I would imagine the connections are almost as important as the expertise that you have to make sure that you can bring all that
They are,
together.
but a lot of times when you get into these things, you're sometimes doing them for the first time.
Mm.
But when you're doing it for the first time, you're relying on your ability to find them before.
That makes sense.
And so you have that knowledge you have a first idea of, where am I going to go to find this, and you
Yeah.
can gently navigate your way to find it.
Interesting. That seems like that would be challenging but fun at the same time.
It is, and it takes a lot of time.
Okay.
It takes a lot of time. And a lot of time that a lot of people don't, necessarily see in the finished product.
Mm-hmm. That's agreed. So one of the questions, how do I avoid getting taken advantage of? I know a lot of times, myself as well, I hired a contractor once, and it was more, I kind of felt like the decision my wife made on who she selected to do our project that we need was the person that she felt least was going to take advantage of her. And I didn't realize that at the time, but when we started getting through everything, I was like, why did you select this individual? And through her talking, she told me, I was like, oh, you felt like this was the person that was least likely to take advantage of you. So I know that's a big thing. How can somebody avoid getting taken advantage of by a contractor? Or at least sometimes there are times where I feel like the contractor didn't do anything wrong when they're explaining the story to me. And so it's not just what happened, but how they can feel comfortable with everything that's taken place.
Okay, well, I don't necessarily sit in the chair of the person building the house,
Mhm.
looking for a contractor that often.
Yeah.
Okay, but I do select my subs.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I go out and select subs, I'm looking again for, first of all, their knowledge. And I want to go out and see them working in multiple places.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see their work. I also want to, have a conversation with them and feel them out and see, first of all, do they have the knowledge to build the home? Second of all, do they have the intentions that would be in my best interest? And how do they feel about their trade? Did they get into it to make money, or did they get into it to build homes, or is there just a little bit of a mix going on there?
Interesting.
And that's pretty much experience, if they have my best intentions. And then also, what type of, what's their motivation? What is it? Is it to build a beautiful home and to satisfy the customer, or is it to, make a buck? And
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you talked about whose best intention at heart. I know all the realtors that I choose to work with and that I recommend, I won't recommend a person that I know wouldn't put the person first before the commission or anything that goes along with that. And so I've told this story numerous times that one of the first times when I got into this business full time, I had a member call me and we were going through with a home purchase. She had been through a divorce. Her and her daughter were buying a home. And she called me. She's like, Taylor, I just don't feel comfortable with this home. And it was kind of out of the blue, like everything was going smooth. And I was like, well, I mean, is it just bad booga booga, kind of as a joke? And she's like, that's exactly what it is. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of weird. I've never had this situation before. I was really worried how the agent would react to it. And so when I called the agent, he's like, oh, I'll get the cancellation contract right now. We'll get that over. We'll find her a home that she loves. I called that person afterwards and I was like, I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect that sort of reaction from you. And he was like, the most important thing that we can do is make sure that we're getting the client what they need and putting their best interests at heart. And I was like, well, that's how I hadn't really formulated in my mind how I operate with that, but everybody that we want to work with, we have that where that their interest is the most important thing to make sure that at the end they're happy with it, that's paramount more than anything else.
Right. But one other thing that I just thought about while you were talking was you want to pick somebody who can, pardon the cliche, but get the job done.
Okay.
Okay. That they have a reliable source of tradesmen, that they have a reliable source of suppliers, and that they have the capability of pushing the job forward when it needs to be.
Okay.
And to strive towards those deadlines and to get there so that you can have a completed home.
One thing that you have mentioned a couple times that I thought about is that suppliers. I kind of just thought that everybody went to Lowe's and Home Depot to get everything, and I'm learning that that's not necessarily the case. So, how many different suppliers do you work with to be able to get a home built?
Well, it depends on what they're supplying.
Okay.
And sometimes it can be well, there's lots of suppliers. So it just depends. And even those suppliers that you get, especially in the custom world, okay, they're going to go to different suppliers to get those things, and then
sense.
You're finding out, oh, it's coming out of Palm Springs, or it's coming out of Oregon, or it's coming out of different places across the West.
Yeah.
And even the East Coast when it comes to certain items.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I love doing these to learn about that stuff. James, can we go to the next slide there? All right, so we talked a little bit earlier about if you're not doing a construction loan, how you can be able to still access your equity, be able to do construction projects. We'll get into these in just one second. There are a couple questions, and James, I actually can't see those. Can you read those for me?
Let's see. Are there different loans for VA eligible clients?
We do have different loans for VA eligible clients. However, we cannot, it's my understanding that we can't do a construction loan with a VA loan. I think that you have to have specific builders to be able to do that sort of thing. And that's just not something that we're eligible to do. If that is different, Ashley, I will contact you directly and give you some information on that. From my understanding is no, we can't do a construction loan with a VA. We can be able to do a VA loan to pull cash out to be able to do the project, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But to do the construction loan with the VA, that's not something that I think that we can be able to do.
And this next one, Rahul, if you want to send me an email and just send me that email, I'll send that link over to you.
Perfect. Okay, so we talked about a construction loan. Remember, a construction loan is that we're using the future value of the home. So to give you an example, if you owe, let's say that you owe $400,000 on a home and the home's worth $600,000. You have $200,000 worth of equity. If your project's going to be $400,000, then we need to do a construction loan because at the end, let's say that the home is going to be worth $1 million. That would allow us to be able to have the equity there to be able to do that sort of project. If somebody comes up and they're like, I have a project that is going to cost me $85,000. They owe $300,000 on their home. Their home's worth $600,000. They have $300,000 of equity. We would not look at a construction loan for that individual. We would look at a couple different options and kind of go through some questions to find out what product's going to be best for them. So the first thing that we'd want to do is how much do you owe on your primary residence? What is the rate? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? If they've got a 3.5% rate on their first mortgage, it's probably not going to be in their best interest to be able to refinance that. So we're going to start to look at second mortgage options. What a second mortgage is that it's in second lien position to the first mortgage that's going to remain in place. We're basically doing a second loan on the home. That allows us to be able to give you X amount of dollars to be able to do your project. And there's not a lot of red tape that goes along with it. It's a very, very easy loan. We're able to do a loan for $85,000 in the scenario that I presented to you. And then you can be able to take that $85,000 and do your construction project. I'll ask you a question, maybe a little bit different for you, but on a project that if somebody's redoing a kitchen, how much do they typically have to pay up front, do you see in your business? And then how does the money getting distributed, how does that typically work?
Well, builders do it differently.
Okay.
So everybody may have their own formula. Some people, first of all, you come in and it would be a really good idea if you had everything picked out and priced, but that takes time. Okay. So generally when somebody comes to me, they wanted to have their kitchen built last,
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they're like super eager for you to jump in there and to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be really good if you can come to a builder and say, okay, well, let's start with the type of cabinets I want. What are the options I can get? And then the countertops, and then the fixtures, and then the appliances, and flooring. Do I have to rip out my old floor?
Mm-hmm.
Start with site visits, stuff like that. What about the lighting and electricity? And how's that all going to play with my new remodel? And then if you can nail down those things right up front first, it makes the process so much easier, not only from the point of view of cost, but also from scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, okay, go, and you start picking out things along the way, which happens most of the time,
Yeah.
Especially in a custom world, because you can have all different cost range.
Mm-hmm.
It again will take more time. It'll generally cost a little more, and there'll be not as much communication as far as like your expectations. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, let's remodel that kitchen for your number, $80,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come out and pick out a lot of things that are really great, because there's a lot of stuff out there that looks really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And now that kitchen's going to cost $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you heard was 80.
Yeah.
And that's what I get all the time. So I'm very cautious about saying, like a first number.
Yeah.
Because that's the number they hear, and that's by the time you get to the end, that's the number they expect.
Yeah.
So you have to have good communication. You have to tell your clients right up front that let's pick everything out. And then once you do get to the point where you get finished, let the contractor finish it. Let them finish it. Let them get it done, even if it takes a few extra days or a week.
Yeah.
Let them finish it. You'll be so much happier if you do.
So when you say let them finish it, do people just want to like get back into the kitchen?
No, especially with new construction.
Okay.
And custom homes, because there's a lot of odd and ends of the punch list,
Mm-hmm.
that you may end up with. And, the more things that you can get taken off of that punch list, the more things that you can get completed, because no home really goes together perfectly the first time. There's always a register that the drywallers didn't cut off right, so the HVAC guys couldn't put it in, and they got to come back and cut it out and put it in. So, there's these little details and they're, right there was 2 subs involved, plus the contractor, just to stick a register in the ceiling. So, just let them get it done and then move in, and you'll be so much happier, because you're so tired of the contractor being in your face or not being able to move in. You're just so eager.
It's interesting. It seems like it's one of 2 extremes, though. I'll talk to somebody and they absolutely love the process they went through. They love their contractor. Or I'm kind of a therapist between the contractor and the member who's doing this, where they'll complain, and then on the other side, I'll call them and be like, so what's going on with this? And then it's very interesting.
So let me ask you this. What does it come down to? Is it the communication.
It's communication. Yeah,
Yes.
there's something they didn't agree on something, or there was something that one person was expecting and the other person couldn't do. And what's really interesting, I had one recently where I was talking with the person that was building a home, and this was a very, very unique home. They were building a duplex where the old Bees ballpark used to be, and I know that area is going through quite a few changes. So the builder was building this very, very custom home, and he had put a lot of automation throughout the home. Well, they couldn't get the remotes. And so the client was really, really upset about, well, I'm not getting this, this, and this. And then I called over to the builder and I'm like, oh yeah, he's not willing to sign this for your final payment because he doesn't have the remotes. And he's like, dude, we're like, I sent him the email, we're 6 to 8 weeks on the remotes. Like, that has nothing to do with us. And really, it had nothing to do with the builder, because he had actually reached out to the automation company himself. So the builder was actually getting blamed for what was going on in the process when the builder didn't have anything to do with it. So it all just really came down to communication. When I got to and we got to closing, I was like, it was funny to be sitting there because I'm like, you guys were really arguing about something, but you're fighting with the wrong person because of the frustrations of everything that had been taking place. They thought it was going to be a 9-month project. It ended up taking 18 months to get done. So.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about these products real quickly. So let's talk about a fixed rate second mortgage, and then we'll talk about a home equity line of credit. Those are going to be two separate products. So a fixed rate second mortgage is exactly what it sounds like. It has a fixed rate. It's not a variable rate. It's a second mortgage. It goes behind your first mortgage that's in place. In this situation, as I said, $300,000 that you owe on your first, the value is $600,000. You're looking for $85,000. We would do a second mortgage for that amount. We've got different terms that are available. That's where you'd want to talk to myself or one of our mortgage consultants about your options that are available to find the right product for you. A home equity line of credit is essentially a credit card that's on your home in the equity, for the equity part of it. Sometimes the home equity line of credits are going to be a better option for you than a fixed rate second mortgage. If somebody's looking to do a lot of the project themselves and they think it's going to take a year, year and a half for them to be able to get that done, a home equity line of credit would probably be a better option for them. It's really important that you talk to us. We have good communication and find out what's going to be the best product for you. We'll get you into that. If it's going to be, let's do a home equity line of credit for you now and then move you into a second mortgage, we can definitely be able to do that. We want to find out what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish, and really create a roadmap from you from that point to the end of the road so that you feel comfortable with the process. It looks like we have a couple more questions. James, do you want to ask us about or read those off for us?
Let's see. This is from Hans. How is the future value determined from permit plans?
That's an excellent question. So the appraiser will actually go out to the site where the home is going to be. They're going to go through a lot of the same process that they do on doing an appraisal for a normal home. They'll try and find comparables that are a half a mile away, 1 mile away, 1.5 miles, 2 miles, and they'll be able to look at the finishes that you're going to have with your plans, and they're going to give an estimate on how much they think that the home is going to be worth at the very, very end. We had, as I said, we had an appraiser earlier. I asked him what the variance should be from appraiser to appraiser. He said no more than 5%. So two appraisers probably aren't going to give the exact same dollar amount. That being said, they should be able to give us a very, very good value of how much they think that the home's going to be worth at the very end.
This is from Robert. I recognize the benefits of hiring a general contractor, but are there options for those who intend on general contracting the construction of their own home? Also, does construction have to be in Utah for loans through you first?
We only can be able to do loans for homes that are going to be in the state of Utah. So that's an excellent question, Robert. If you want to do a build of your own home, we do allow self-builds. However, it has to be under a general contracting license. So the person who is building the home needs to have a general contracting license. We think that the licensing process shows us that there is a level of expertise there to be able to get done. I think in talking to Scott, we know that there is a lot of things that go into this, and just allowing a person who has no expertise to be able to build a home, we might run into some problems with that. So we do require that you have a general contracting license if you want to do a self-build. Not a lot of people allow for a self-build. I know we're one of the few financial institutions that do allow that. So that is something that we can be able to do for people, but it has to be under a general contracting license. Looks like we got one more question that just popped up.
let's see, Heidi asks, how will these two loan options, fixed or HELOC, affect my current home loan interest rate? Do I have to refinance?
No, you don't. That's the benefit of having a second mortgage, is it leaves your first mortgage in place. So when I sit down with somebody, I want to ask I want to get a full financial picture of where you're at. And we'll ask about your first mortgage. We'll ask about other debts that you have to really create a plan that's going to be beneficial for you. I had an individual the other day where I talked to them. They called and they just wanted a $20,000 second mortgage to do a bathroom. They wanted to finish their master bathroom. Well, in my conversation I had with them, I found out that they had $40,000 in credit card debt from other projects that they had done. And I asked the individual, why aren't you putting this into the second mortgage? I didn't even know that is something that I can be able to do. Absolutely. We ended up doing the loan for $66,000, put them in a much better financial situation. They went from 22% interest down to 8% on all of their loans, put them in a much better financial position to be able to get that stuff paid off long term. So we'll take a picture of everything and make sure that we have a good detailed conversation to get you in the best financial position possible. Okay, all right, I've got some other questions for you. Oh, yeah, absolutely, Scott.
There was so you did ask me a question about how much upfront is it going to cost?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, if a person's doing it on cost plus or something like that, typically what'll happen is you'll have progress payments throughout. And then some builders will actually want 50% down.
That's the normal of what I hear.
And go from there. But in a lot of the custom worlds in Summit County, it's generally on a cost plus percentage.
Okay. Why did they ask for half up front? I always thought that was weird that they wouldn't just get paid as the project goes on.
You know, it's a two-way street.
Okay.
Okay. A contractor wants to do the work and get the job done. Okay. He also wants to get paid.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll tell you, when it gets down to the end of a job, it doesn't matter really how wealthy the client is. I've had people just say, you know what, I always take 10% off, and you're like, what?
Interesting.
Yeah. So it all comes down to getting paid. So from the contractor's point of view, he doesn't want to put a lien on your house because that's expensive.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what he might do is take 50% down and then kind of stay ahead of the curve as things go, just to make sure he gets paid. And then there's maybe say a 10% retention at the back end that, you know, he's probably willing to, you know, have to put into trust at a certain point. If everything goes well, it's a piece of cake, there's no problem. But that's the way those typically go. How much, you know, whether it's 50% down but that's still negotiable.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've always wondered, because that's kind of a standard thing that I've heard. Got a couple other questions that came in. James, you want to read those off for us?
Yeah, let's see. Is there a process? Let's see. Let me put this down. Sorry. Is there a process in loan types or in the process you are going through here for building an investment property as opposed to a primary residence, i.e. duplex, quadplex, etc., built for rent?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can be able to do that as a financial institution. However, our commercial real estate department takes care of those investment property builds. So that's something I recommend that you give us a call. We have a conversation to look at different options, maybe look at all of your assets, see what option is going to be best for you. And if we need to get you over to one of our business loan officers, we can be able to do that. We have quite a few of them here at the financial institution. They're all fantastic. We can get you over to Chris. We can get you over to Chase and Mike and really have them take care of you on that sort of front. So I like to have the conversation, make sure that that's the direction we need to go, and then we can be able to get you over to them and they can get you taken care of.
Great. Alex asks, can you finance the purchase of the land with the construction loan?
Absolutely. So that is something that you can be able to do. It does create a heartache to kind of do that. It's much better to buy the land up front and then do the construction aspect. There's so many things that go into getting the plans ready to do a build. And so when we're going through the process of making sure that they're getting the land as well, they can be under contract on that land for months. And typically there's another buyer that comes along, or there's something else that creates to stir the mud that's there. So it's much easier if you buy the land, you have it, you can be able to get the build all ready to go, and then we can be able to move forward with that. But we can be able to do them simultaneously if you have the stomach for it.
Nick asks, of the 3 other options besides construction loan, if I own my current home outright, full title, and don't have a first, is HELOC the only option besides a construction loan?
No, we can be able to do a first mortgage. It is a refinance of a home that's paid off. So we'll go through and ask questions before we even get to what product's going to be best. We want to start asking questions. If you know how much you're going to be borrowing and need to pay a contractor half up front and then pay them the rest as the project's going through, most likely a first mortgage is going to be best for you. If it's going to be something that's going to be drawn out, a HELOC could be a good option. We'll ask questions. We'll get a good idea of what you're looking for through your answers, and then we'll direct you to that product. We can do a first mortgage refinance on a paid off home. Okay. Okay. All right, Scott, I got some questions for you to be able to go over just some things that I've been thinking about and conversations I've had with members. So we'll kind of go through just a couple items. So I read an article in July of 2023 that talked about higher material prices are here to stay. It said that 82% of construction materials experienced significant increase in cost. So the average was 19%. I thought it would be a little bit more than that, but what items did you see that had the largest jump because of just increased cost of construction materials?
I think that COVID took everybody by surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, sheet goods, they're like OSB, the materials that go into building cabinets, particle board, MDF, all those things were products that fell way behind.
Okay.
And so when they fell way behind because people weren't showing up to work to produce these products, there was supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw OSB go from $12 a sheet on 7/16 to $64.
What is OSB?
Oriented strand board.
Okay.
And that's
what's inside the cabinet?
no, that's
Okay.
typically what you see on the outside of a home.
Okay.
It's kind of
Okay.
goldenish.
Okay.
It's a sheer.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the sheet goods that go inside the cabinets too. So you saw a lot of cabinet makers, their prices just
Mm-hmm.
doubled, tripled, or quadrupled,
Yeah.
especially their costs.
Mm-hmm.
And still, if you go over here to the local lumber yards, you're still going to find those sheet goods are high. But I was in Home Depot the other day, and their price on OSB, which is kind of like my little gauge,
Mm-hmm.
was down to 15.
Okay.
So prices went way up. They came down a little bit. They went up a little bit more, and now they're back down, getting back to where they're still maybe 30% higher than
Mm-hmm.
they were before COVID, but they're getting down. Now, I don't think they're going to go anywhere below that. It's kind of like the price of gas.
Yeah.
It goes up and down. Right now, it's really good.
Yeah.
But we're all thinking, oh, this is great, but it's going to tick up. And so the same is true with materials.
Okay. So how can a member who is planning to build try and mitigate those costs? Like, what are some things that they could possibly be able to do to help their project not be as expensive as it may be? Is there anything that they could be able to do to help with those costs?
And the best thing they can do is, first of all, communication.
Okay.
Know what they want and price it out. And then, get the ball rolling. Get the home or the addition or whatever it is that they're going to do in process and progress quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And to get those things on site at a reasonable time so it's not too far outside of that window.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there things that have become standard in a home that somebody could remove to help curb those costs? There may not be. I was just thinking of how things have changed in homes that were built in the 90s to the 2000s, 2010, now 2020s, and things that have become standard. Is there something that you think that's standard today where you look at it, it's like, why is that necessary? These are things that we could be able to do to decrease costs.
to answer the question, there really isn't a whole lot of things that you can decrease cost on. However, the most expensive rooms in a house, of course, are the bathrooms and kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you decrease the number of bathrooms, like say you're building an AUD, instead of putting 2 bathrooms in, you put in 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe you can do that. You can minimize the kitchen. You can always go out and shop appliances.
Yeah.
There's all different types of. You can spend $3,000 for a kitchen, or you can spend $25,000. So
It sounds
it
like
just depends on the finishes.
Yeah, it sounds like instead of just one big thing that I'm thinking about, it's lots of little things to make sure that you can be able to save that bottom line.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. I want to shift gears. You talked about accessory dwelling units. I brought them up a little bit. So in April of last year, Salt Lake City Council passed laws making it much easier to be able to do accessory dwelling units. And it's going to be easier to get building permits to be able to do those. I know that this isn't your area of expertise, but I wanted to talk to you just from your expertise of actually building. What challenges of building an accessory dwelling unit do you think that people are going to be running into? Because I get dozens of calls a month about this. What are things that a normal person wouldn't think about when they're like, hey, I would like to put an accessory dwelling unit in my backyard?
Right. I think first of all, as you mentioned to me once before we got started, was that that people think that they're going to be cheaper to build than a house. The thing that is cheaper about an accessory dwelling unit is that you don't have to buy the land.
Yes.
You own the land.
Yeah.
So the land isn't an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next thing is that you have to hook up to all the utilities, and hopefully you don't have to go through the house to do that. You can find navigate a quick and easy way to put that in. I know that we did one where we had to actually do a street cut and tap into the street, but when it comes to sewer but the other thing is that the construction costs are the same as building a home.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is that, and I tell a lot of people this when I do remodels and some ADUs, is that you lose the economies of scale. So let's
say that again. You lose what?
The economies of scale.
The economies of scale. Okay.
Okay. So let's say you're building a 3,000 square foot house. Well, you have a lot of floor space in there that isn't a kitchen or a bathroom, and it's cheap space. Okay. Well, that gives you economy of scale. Okay. And as you start to get smaller and smaller, you still have you lose that economy of scale when it comes to price per square foot.
Interesting.
And so so if you're thinking, oh, I hear this builder does it for $100 a square foot. Well, your AUD may be, and that's on a 3,000 square foot or a 2,000 square foot home.
Yeah.
And since we're only building, 600 to 800 square feet.
Yeah.
Sometimes those economies of scale aren't there, and the price per square foot is actually higher.
That makes sense. I actually, so this was before the our accessory dwelling unit craze exploded. My home's on 1/3 of an acre, and where they put the home, I wish I could talk to the people who custom built our home. So I'm like, why did you do this? Because I'm sure that there was a reason, but it doesn't make any sense from my perspective. We have a ton of room on the side of the house, and I was like, well, I'd just like to basically turn my single home into a dual home. And I was getting these bids on it, and this was like in 2016, 17, and it was $250 a square foot. And I was just like, I thought this would be much cheaper because I own the land, and then they started going everything where we would have to do a street cut with the utilities and going through all that stuff. It opened my eyes to a lot of things that I'd never thought about before. And then as I was like, well, what if I did a 2,000 square foot home rather than a 2,500 square foot home? Like, you're really just not going to change that much in your costs and everything that goes along with that.
Right, and so then you get the economies of scale. You can still add cheaper space because you're getting away. You're satisfying that heavier cost up front for those other items you were talking about.
Interesting. Do you think that our accessory dwelling units are a wave of the future to help with housing and what's available, or do you think that they're just inefficient to build? The costs are expensive, and this isn't something that you're going to see a whole lot of?
I think that from a theoretical point of view, they're awesome. They're wonderful. From a personal perspective, I would hate it.
Yeah.
I don't want someone living,
Mhm.
putting their trash in, going to the same mail place
Yeah.
to get their mail,
Yeah.
having to deal with their dog or whatever
Mhm.
too, you're putting a renter on your property and the noise and so forth that comes from that. I personally wouldn't like it, but they are theoretically
Yeah.
wonderful.
It's interesting. I think about this from people. I'm 40 years old, and so I don't have any friends or anybody that is in my sphere who bought a home and then started renting out rooms. But
Right.
I talked to my brother who's 7 years younger and talked to people who are younger than 30. It's very common when they buy a home that they're immediately going to have somebody move into one of the rooms. And it's just, even if they're married, and it's very interesting to see the thought process change and what they're thinking compared to what I was when I was their age.
Yeah, no, I had the same thing too. I had some early on, I lived in a nice area, I had a nice home. And some of my buddies couldn't afford, the same area, but they had jobs there. And so, yeah, I went out and rented rooms to them because I knew them. I liked
Yeah.
them. They were good company.
Mhm.
And then, when it comes to family too, maybe you have a sister, brother, or an aging parent that you want to put in. That's awesome because you have a relationship with that person,
Yeah.
and hopefully that relationship's good.
Yeah.
But if it's someone that you don't necessarily know as well or whatever, sometimes that rental stuff can be more stress on the same property.
Yeah, makes sense. I did want to ask about something unique, not spend a lot of time on this. I want to talk about lumber because the lumber spike that happened in May of 2021, I was actually doing a construction loan for somebody that I inherited. And they're like, well, that cost is not accurate anymore. And they had to give me a new cost. And the cost of lumber, I can't remember the details on it, but it more than doubled. And it was just an insane price. So just to give some numbers, so lumber was 150% more expensive than it is today. It was 300% more expensive than the low of 2020 when that spike happened. How do you deal with those kind of unique spikes in the marketplace? Like, I'm thinking, I'm just hearing communication over and over and over again when I'm asking you these questions. But how do you deal with something like that with somebody?
It's you try to get it done quick. It comes down to what your window of time is. And I was actually talking to another builder the other day, and we were talking about how back in the 80s we were building homes for $35 a square foot, and and those numbers continually creeped up, and so did the cost of, and it was mostly associated with lumber. And we, over the last 40 years, have always, just like gasoline again, have always seen fluctuation in lumber prices. And again, when you're taken off guard by something like COVID, that was unprecedented.
Yeah.
And no one had ever seen that before, at least in my era. And so we were all caught off guard by that. And it took things way high, and hopefully they're coming down again. But again, you have a window of time that you expect to build your home, get it done.
Yeah.
And but those lumber prices or quotes are generally good for 30 days. And and beyond that, prices fluctuate.
Yeah, I think one of the things you talked about, if you got a 30-day quote when you're thinking about doing something, if you're in a financial position to do it, it seems like it's a good time to move forward with that sort of thing because you know exactly what you're dealing with. You don't have these unknown variables that might creep up in the future. A couple questions on custom.
Concrete's one too.
Oh, okay.
Concrete again. Anytime you have any type of material,
yeah,
you're going to run into those, different prices and labor associated with those. And again, like you were saying, that we're running out of trades, and we need to replace the trades.
Yeah.
And so that's going to cause prices to continue to rise.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't think about concrete. Actually, we'll move on. We got an example of one of the homes that that Scott has built. Scott, I want to talk to me about this build real quickly and kind of who you are, what you do, sell yourself to the members in what you could be able to do to be able to help them if they're looking at building a home like this?
Well, actually, to begin with, this was a 1,200 square foot Rambler that was partially tore down, and so we weren't able to get the picture of the original home in there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's your typical 1,200 square foot Rambler.
Yeah.
And it was built in 1985.
Okay.
And we were able to use the existing foundation of the basement. And the basement, by the way, was only 8 feet. So we pony walled and put pony walls on top of that foundation and took the ceiling height in the basement up to 9 feet.
Wow. Okay.
And that really made it feel luxurious.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we put an addition on it, and then we were able to create that 6,000 square foot monster right there.
Yeah.
And it's still under construction right now. It just has the landscaping and a punch list that needs to get done on it. But that's what we did in that case. And that was actually a home that we decided to build for our kids.
Okay. Is there something specifically that if you're thinking about doing a tear down of a property and you're thinking about buying a property in the long-term thing, is there something that's nice to look at to say, yes, we could be able to do this in the future? Because I find that younger people have more grand ideas of what they want to do with their home. When I first bought my first starter home, that was a thing. A starter home when I bought my home was a thing. The term starter home has completely gone away for most people. Is there something that they can be able to look at if they're looking at kind of an older home where we're thinking, I would like to do this in the future? This would be a good home to be able to do that with. Is there land size? Is that going to be important? Is there having a basement in the home? Are these things that can be able to allow this sort of project to be completed where another property might not be able to do that?
Again, it all depends on the property.
Okay.
And what you want to do to it and what your expectations are and what your personal preferences are. And also, how much work you're willing to put into it as a do-it-yourself.
Okay.
Because that's going to, ultimately save you money. But again, if you do it yourself, it's really important that you vet all your subcontractors, that you look around, you check out their work, and you get some real good recommendations from your neighbors or your friends or wherever you can, and then understand what it is you want to do is really big.
Yeah.
But things like this, they take a lot of time, they take a lot of thought. You create them on a napkin and then you move to a concept sketch and you try to make it a reality.
There's got to be a lot of pride when you see what was sitting there before, 1,200 square foot Rambler, you do the concept and then you see where you're at the end.
Yeah, there is. Well, there's a lot of reward, especially if you can succeed.
Yeah.
And meaning bringing it in on time, bringing it in on budget, and making sure the occupants are happy.
Okay, last question I have for you. Building a custom home compared to doing like an Ivory home or something like that. What are the benefits that somebody would see in a custom home that they won't see in a normal builder that could be able to just say, this is the kind of home that we build?
Well, I think like anything else, when you get a custom home builder, you get 24-hour personal attention. You're not just waiting for the builder to tell you when you can visit the job site.
Yeah.
Who your superintendent is, and when you can have a final. I know a guy who bought a Toll Brothers home, and he had a 30 item punch list. Even 2 months after he moved in, and he's still dealing with that. With a custom home builder, you have somebody who's available to you all the time, and they will be there to get that done. And you're not talking to a superintendent; you're generally talking to a general contractor. who actually has a general contracting license and build these things, not just a superintendent that someone hired who used to be a framer and
Yeah.
is starting to get their feet wet on construction.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that goes back to what you said earlier, that you don't know these people initially, but at the end of it, you end up being their friends. If you're on call for 24 hours a day, obviously they're not calling you at any time, but you're
Oh,
there.
they are.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
I like this.
They are. They do.
Yeah.
They do. A lot of your clients are typically very successful. They're,
Mhm.
you know, and they get a thought. Well, they may not call you, but they'll definitely text you or email you at all hours of the day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know how that goes. Well, I try and make myself available. I tell people I'm available from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week. Most people don't reach out, but at the same time, I do have those certain people that they are very busy. They get off work at 9 o'clock, so that 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock hour can be there. We really appreciate your time today. We're going to end there. If you have any questions, the phone number at the very end is our main hotline to be able to talk to any of our mortgage consultants. If you'd like to reach out to me, my office number is up there at 801-481-8864. You can be able to email me as well. Also, if you'd like to contact Scott, you can be able to contact him on his cell phone number. You can text him or you can call him, and then you can be able to send him an email as well. I really appreciate the participation today and the information, hopefully, that we gave you can be able to help you with your projects. I hope you have a wonderful day.